Good evening. You're very welcome to this week's episode of Centre Ground. And tonight the spotlight is on the good life. My three guests are three people who have stepped out of the rat race to live an authentic life, to live the life of their dreams. I'll be chatting to Kathleen O'Hara Farren from County Donegal, who is the founder and director of the Edge School. From County Galway, Dr. Dilis Clare is a medical herbalist and a GP. And from County Kerry, Siobhán de Paor is a poet, and along with her partner, she runs the Wild Irish Retreat Centre in the Dingle Peninsula. And as always, before we begin, I invite you to go to the Irish Inquiry website where there's a drop-down box and you can enter in details of how you can help us with your technical skills. Or alternatively, if you wish to donate a few bob towards the upkeep and running of the platform, that would be most welcome. Well, those of you who were around in the 1970s may remember the British sitcom that ran on the BBC, I think for 3 or 4 seasons. It was called The Good Life, and it was 2 couples, but Jerry and his wife, Tom and his wife Barbara had, I suppose, given up their day jobs and were attempting to live a life of self-sufficiency in suburbia. And it was a wonderful series starring Penelope Keith. And in the last couple of days, I've met 3 extraordinary women who, as it were, have stepped out of the rat race and are living a very authentic life, following their heart's desire and their dreams. And my first guest tonight is Kathleen O'Hara Farren, who runs the Edge School in County Donegal. Kathleen, you're very welcome to Centre Ground.
Thank you, Anna. It's such a pleasure and wonderful theme to be speaking about.
Well, Kathleen, I met you for the first time actually on Saturday evening when we were both asked to speak at Sovereignty Ireland Convergence. And I was just so incredibly impressed by your contribution. I've invited you to be one of our guests tonight. So can you tell us a little bit about your background before we begin?
Well, I'm living here in Inishowen, Donegal, which is where my father's family came from. And I have a family of 3, and we live on the land. And my husband Brendan runs Big Green Weaving, which is basket making. And I remember him saying when we first met 20 years ago, he said, if we can't make it, we'll have to buy it. So if we need something, we make it first. Yeah, I come from Canada originally, and I'm really happy to be living here in our handmade house and living a peaceful life with homeschool from the beginning children, lovely children who have that freedom of choice, and some of them have chosen to go to school. And we had a home birth as well. So feeling at home in myself is what I have achieved, and I would like to share that with people through the Edge School.
So tell me a little bit about how the Edge School came about and how it operates.
Well, gatherings is what I've always enjoyed, right? So people coming together, sitting around a campfire often, and some sense of fairness, being listened to, not debating and not competing, but listening and cooperating. I studied communications way back in DIT in the 90s, and throughout my career in media, and also exploring the arts and music. I've always leaned into heart-centered communications, and I've had to practice that to learn it, because we live in a world where the head is given priority. So now what I've been doing is studying the heart intelligence and the belly intelligence, and I'm discovering the systems of the body are really interesting and very, very helpful towards living a holistic and a healthy life. So the Edge School, right, comes from both the word hedge, the hedge school, which is like outside of, you know, the hedge school being an Irish way of learning things from our past, but also the edge is where the margins are and where the interesting things happen, where two things meet. I live near the river, the Foyle River, where it meets the ocean and where it meets the hills, you know. So what happens on the edges is interesting, and I've always felt comfortable there, and I finally, as I say, I feel at home in myself. And the Edge School began when I needed a vehicle, a container. I needed to share the social permaculture that I was learning. And so the edge comes from, the word edge comes from one of the principles of permaculture, which I think is a really helpful way forward. And so when I studied social permaculture, which was really people communicating with each other in a way that was easy to find a consensus. There's so many techniques that is available for people to find harmonious ways forward. And quite often they are sort of designed with nature as a template. So how nature is that everything gets a chance to grow, everything gets a chance to shine, and likewise us as well. How to create the conditions so that everybody can shine is what I've been learning, and I'm finding ways to share it. And hopefully tomorrow, what I'd invite people to do, if they're interested, is to join the mailing list on theedgeschool.net. And tomorrow I'm going to have a small gathering, which is going to be, I'm calling it Thursday at 3. So tomorrow at 3. So if you're on the mailing list, you'll get the link to that. And it's just to consult, to see what people are interested in and how I might be able to give that to them. So I hope that's clear.
Okay, so there's just a couple of things that you've said there that I'd like you to unpack a little bit further. The first thing is that you mentioned that nowadays everything is centered on the head to the exclusion of the heart and the belly. How does heartfelt communication differ from that is coming from the head?
Well, if you put your hand on your heart right now, I invite you to do that. It's not learning through the head, so let's just do it. Hand on heart, hand on belly. And it's like acknowledging the wisdom of the heart and expanding your heart. And expanding your heart, and expanding your heart. And then what happens with heart's communication would be the listening is not from a, what am I going to say next? Or how does that fit into what I already know? It's more of, isn't that interesting? And how can I be more curious? It's like yes and instead of no but kind of communication. I know people know what it's like. Children invite it in us. Children bring it out in us. Songs, you know, when you feel safe, you know, and that's very much part of the foundations, is to feel safe. And here's a little technique. If you rub the top of you cross your arms over and rub from the top of your shoulders down to your elbow, believe it or not, It speaks to your vagus nerve, which is where you either fight or flight, go into stress. This simple technique over and over, it's like hugging yourself, actually gives the message of safety to your body. So it's like self-communication is where it's at. And that's what I've been studying, and that's what I want to pass on to people. And also, just while we're on it, the outdoors. It is a very simple point, but the outdoors gives us so much. It gives us access to our natural genius. So that's the best gift you could give yourself. And this isn't science. This is an innate knowing. It's an innate knowing that I'm nurturing. So I'm building my innate immunity through how I treat myself. I'm building my innate, I'm bringing my true self out. And that's something I'd like to share with people. And that's what a lot of the circles that I'm in are doing. And you'll find us singing songs around campfires. You'll find us learning about the herbs. You'll find us, you know, a lot of the people say in the Glen of the Downs 20 years ago, this was they were called eco warriors, or we preferred vigil keepers. We decided after that to go plant trees and grow food. And that's what a lot of people are interested in. Like I'm doing that series with Paddy at the moment.
Okay, maybe we'll have a look now. We just have a very short clip. So Danny, if you can just run those short video clips with Paddy in the Inishowen Peninsula growing the vegetables.
So here we are in the polytunnel in January, and you see the plants have grown and were planted, believe it or not, in August, September in the greenhouse. And then I bought them down here for planting in the middle of September, and then they grew on very slowly into the winter, and now they're stopped growing really in January. But as you see, there's a lot of produce here. Yeah, that's winter pulsane. That's miner's lettuce, and that's lovely vitamin C you're getting in the winter time when everything outside is kind of coming to a close.
Miner's lettuce.
Miner's lettuce. So it must have been for the people on the Klondike or something like that. Any of the miners. So that is us in the polytunnel. We'll be planting up more as the season goes on in the polytunnel to get a head start, and then by the summertime we'll be changing them to tomatoes, cucumbers, and all the different lovely things that you can grow in the polytunnel. So keep tuned, and we'll see you soon.
So Kathleen, this is a series that you are presenting and producing, a gardening series with Paddy, your neighbour, who has a beautiful garden.
And he sings as well. So we're going to, you know, enjoy the process and share what to do in an Irish garden and try and make it as easy as possible, because growing your own food is pretty important to do right now, and to support people who are growing locally, you know, to let them know you'll buy their food so they can plant it and have. We have so much great land here, and part of my dream for Ireland would be that everything is accessible, either from your own home or from your neighbors. And that's part of the transition movement, you know, transition towns. That has been a foundation of learning and nurturing skills that might have been lost. The joy of doing these things is, well, so many of us know what that's like. You know, to make your own bread and carry your own water and chop your own wood So that's kind of the lifestyle that I've dreamt about and now I'm living. And I would encourage people to do that, because it just fits the bill if you simplify it, simplify your life, and go for the healthy option and take your own body in your hands so that you feel at home in yourself. Ultimately, it's so that we feel at home in our bodies and can celebrate them. And even if there's pain, there are methods that so many people who have lived on the edge and are living on the edge of society have been through immense traumas. And these people are worth talking to because they have found solutions through the difficult times. And they're of all ages. And I'm not worried about the future. I feel like the children who are living now have arrived with an incredible know-how, and we just have to give them a chance to shine. And I really mean that the children who are coming to the earth right at the moment are incredibly bright and very, very able. So that's how I feel.
Just your positivity is just oozing from you. Just wonderful, wonderful positive energy. And I suppose as I'm listening to you speak, you know, you're just in a different time zone, as it were, than the vast majority of us, you know, who are kind of living life at a very, very fast pace. You know, you're just, I suppose, for want of a better word, you're just so incredibly chilled out, living life in your own time, at your own ease, and just enjoying the good life, good food, good health, and living close to nature. So it has been really, really wonderful and enlightening chatting to you, Kathleen, and we'll be coming back to you in the second half of the programme. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody else speaking.
Mm-hmm. Well, my next guest this evening comes from County Galway, Dr. Dilis Clare. She's a GP and a medical herbalist. You're very welcome, Dilis.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks to the last speaker, who I now feel a lot more chilled out than I did when I sat down 15 minutes ago. Thank you.
She's just the epitome of chilled outness, for want of a better word. Well, Dilis, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I'm originally from Dublin. I trained in medicine in UCD a considerable time ago, and was a GP and had various other roles in the UK, in London, and was a GP for a good number of years. I suppose I was always on the margins. Going through medical school as a lesbian feminist was not exactly a bundle of joy. But it always gave me, and I don't come from a medical family, so I don't think I was part of the medical fraternity, and which it very much was a fraternity. I thought I would do obstetrics and gynecology, but Neary and all of the thing to do with the emphysectomies there was a very severe culture at the time. I eventually moved into general practice because it gave me a personal perspective, an ongoing relationship with people, and I felt that there was a role there that I could carve out. I still miss my patients in London. I loved general practice. Gradually became disenchanted with the choices. I describe everything that I do now as optimistic, collaborative, abundant. I was questioning but could see no choices. And eventually, through my gardening, the herbs kept appearing in my basket, kept getting into my ground. What I didn't realize was I was actually digging up the real medicines, which were the dandelions and the nettles. but it very much came through to me through a lived experience. I loved the title of the Center Ground because I felt the ground was centering and had something to do with creativity. Because what I was choosing for my patients, I wouldn't always take myself for what it was indicated for. I was extremely mean with antibiotics, with tranquilizers, with sleeping tablets. That was 25, 30 years ago. That was, the patients in our practice knew to go to one of the other doctors if they wanted those handed out with no structure to it. So eventually, I got frustrated with the things that, like irritable bowel, sinuses, acne, eczema, hay fever, where what I had in the medical bag was very much like a sledgehammer and didn't resolve problems. That was the bit that got to me. Around the same time, this was happening in my gardening. So I sat down one day, and it really was like a light bulb moment where I thought, I think this stuff does something, right? To the herbs sitting all around me and my apple tree and pear tree in an English small back garden. So I went to find out about it. It was quite a journey. I was entirely skeptical. I was looking for something that had the placebo effect, which meant I was able to show my patients that I could hear them, know that they weren't well, and give them time to heal themselves, because I think a lot of the time, especially in general practice, things heal themselves. So I was looking for time for my patients and a placebo effect, which I think is wonderful. I have no argument with the placebo effect. It's got very few side effects, and 1/3 of people to 60% for a lot of conditions get better with it. So I think it's wonderful. So that led me to do eventually a degree in herbal medicine. And at some stage, I realized I had no choice. I wish I'd had a choice. I could have kept my very nice pension. I really, really resisted to the end. It was not a clever decision. It was a gut, heart, cannot do this anymore, because my patients were getting better. I was trained in my practice by 3 of the most forward-thinking and experienced herbalists in the UK, as it so happened. And my patients kept coming back and saying they felt better. These were the patients I'd been looking after for 10 years. They hadn't said this to me before, and I had to listen. So it was very reluctantly. It also solved a problem that I had very convincingly. Every time I got a cold, it went to my chest and I was ending up on inhalers. Not known in my family to have asthma or allergies. I couldn't relate to this at all. And I thought I would test the herbs on myself. And lo and behold, I haven't looked at an inhaler since. But that wasn't what convinced me. That was part of it. Sure helped. I describe what I do as Western herbal medicine. That's my training. I have renamed it classical herbal medicine, because Western herbal medicine is kind of west of what? Is it west of east, or, do you go further west and it's more west? Classical herbal medicine refers to its roots in ancient Persia, Syria. Herbal medicine is the main medicine currently for 90% of the world over history, apart from the last 150 to 200 years, which is a tiny space in the history of medicine. It has been primarily plants that have given us our medicines, and they still do. We've just forgotten. We've forgotten the knowledge that we had. The farmer that works up in Donegal knows his soil. He has tried and tested. It's transformative learning. It's experiential learning. And that's what I loved about the training in herbal medicine. I'd like to kind of resonate with the breath. In Chinese medicine, there's qi. In Ayurvedic medicine, there's prana. In classical herbal medicine, there's pneuma, which is the breath. We also live in a society that's in denial of the cycles of life. So herbal medicine is embedded in the cycles of life, the cycles of our human experience, going through all the different phases. But what I really would like to say to people is that a herbal medicine reflects an abundance, rather than, it's the opposite of fear. It's abundance. And if we question how we look after our health, we have to have a choice. The problem with the current system of established endorsed medicine is that it is unquestioned, and there is no comparison. There's no choice and nothing to compare with, because all of the industrialized societies have been embedded in the pharmaceutical model. So that's the biggest difference. There's enormous continuity between plant medicine, the science name would be phytopharmacy, and chemical pharmacy. There's a very big continuation. Many of the, I should do it that way, I think, many of the drugs that are used evolve from knowledge of herbs. They didn't choose random plants. It's based on empirical knowledge. But then it's refined, and then, if possible, it's made into a synthetic chemical. What nobody is questioning is, when we take that isolated chemical in chalk or other suspension material and we swallow it, where does it go? It goes into the environment. There's no filters. There's no filters in hospitals where they use chemotherapy and the most reserved antibiotics. So where there's a place for everything, pharmaceuticals should be used as little as possible, as often as possible, which leaves an enormous space where people want to feel cared for, sustained, nourished. But if somebody comes to me with my medical bag and they have a migraine, I have chemicals. If somebody comes to me with migraine, I have herbs that will balance the nervous system, nourish the gut, seal the gut, calm the circulation, calm the mind, help the sleep. I don't know anybody who has migraine who doesn't also have quite high stress levels. And most people with chronic conditions have disturbed gut function. So herbs are complex, but you know what? People are complex. Herbs are variable. We're variable. We vary from one day to the next, from one season to the next, from one part of our cycle. If we're women during the fertile years, we change from day to day. So herbs also are complex because they have effects that are more than just an adding of the effects of different constituents. They add to each other, and they are synergistic. So they have more complex effects, not just one adding to another. What's now emerging with network pharmacology and understanding coevolution and variable responses, this is called hormesis or biphasic responses, where a low dose of one herb will have a different effect to a higher dose. And we need not to be afraid of that. That's part of the complexity of living. So there's no line, there's no barrier between what's in one of my medical bags or another. It's all good news. We just need to make a space. And the people who will make a space will not be, we can't wait for the medical profession, because they're trained not to be open. It took me a long time to learn to open to this, to open to these possibilities, to think that frequency and resonance and breath and consistent and persistent actions, even of herbs that are foods. I use them medicinally in a consistent, persistent way, and maybe in a higher dose. And then they have a medicinal effect. It's not magic. It's science, but it's also life. It's the science of life. And herbs bring in the metaphysics. They answer our questions of connectivity. They link us to the ground. They link us to nature. They sustain us and nurture, not just suppress. Drugs are designed to suppress. They're designed to get around our very, very clever antitoxin barriers, mostly in the liver. So they think the cleverer the drug, the better, the most clever the drug, the more clever the drug, the more clever it is at getting around our protective barriers. Now, that's necessary if you have a very overwhelming situation, like a huge flare-up of an autoimmune disease. You can't. You may need to use that collaborative approach, but it's all optimistic.
Yes, and you know, I suppose you have a lovely YouTube channel, and you have a lot of instructional videos there on the various herbs and their properties. And I've just picked on one of them. It was a walk you were taking along the prom in Galway. This beautiful public flower bed there, and yes, we'll have a look now at your video on the marigolds. So Danny, you can roll it there now, please.
So today's Tuesday, and this is Dr. Dilis, helping you any way I can through these difficult days. And today I'd like to introduce you to the marvellous pot marigold. This is different from the African marigold that you might have got for bedding plants. This is Calendula officinalis. I'll just show you the leaves as well. And this is the bud before it comes out. And a beautiful sunny herb, full of antioxidants, anti-inflammatory and lymph drainage herbs, particularly where there is a need for antimicrobial action along with lymph drainage, and particularly useful for healing or vulnerary effect for the gut. So particularly useful for normalizing gut dysbiosis or an abnormal gut flora, which would be common in anything from inflammatory bowel disease to irritable bowel syndrome, and just very easy to grow in the garden. It self-seeds, and this I've seen this flowering in January and February.
Before I let you go now, Dilis, can you tell us a little bit about your practice and how people can contact you and your shop in Galway?
I'm here in the shop at the moment. It's Dr. Clare's Apothecary. We have a Facebook website. The phone number is 091 583 Our staff are here to help you. We can courier. We've whole drawers full of dried herbs. We have herb blends. We have advice more than anything. My staff have been with me, most of them, for 10 or 12 years. So we can give advice. We have a clinic. We do online clinics at the moment with my colleague Lara, and we will be seeing people face to face with all of the necessary taking care of ourselves. From the 5th of March, people will have an option. I would love for people to have access to using herbs for preventing infections of all kinds, and also for treating viral illnesses. So please do give us an opportunity to help you if you think that would be useful.
And I suppose I just have a couple of questions. The first one is, I have had a look at your website, and there's a whole range of herbal products and medical products available. Do you manufacture them all yourself, or do you source them?
We make our own 3 teaspoon tea bags, tea sachets, because it's much easier to comply with. We blend our own herbal teas. The blends of herbs we get from a medical herbalist cooperative, who blend the blends of herbs for us, and then we bottle them here and label them.
Okay, and I know that when I was chatting to you yesterday evening, I told you that I had to go to the doctor at the weekend with a medical condition, and you know, you were saying that everybody should have a store, should have I suppose a cabinet in the house where you have lots of different herbs.
Yeah.
That they're there for you, you know, should you become sick.
I think of it as there being, I cheat a little bit on this, but 4 levels of using the herbs. One is a first aid kit in your home where you have your balms and healing creams and your slippery elm and mallow and ginger and thyme and sage, a lot of things that you can get from the supermarket or your local market. And then furrow and forage, where furrow is where you grow your own herbs and forage the what's in the wayside. And then use herbs as a first resource, where if you have particular conditions, you get advice from a medical herbalist or an experienced herbal medicine dispensary advisor. So you explain what your particular issues are, and you work on the point of view of understanding your own constitution and using the herbs consistently and persistently. But you have them in the cupboard and you know the early signs. And you use them in combination with all kinds of other knowledge and healing practices. And then there's professional herbal medicine skills. If you have something which is recurring and aggravating, recurring and regularly needing pharmacy drugs that you might be able to avoid, or they're moderately severe and interfering with your life, then I suggest that you see a herbalist, preferably a local herbalist. There are a network of herbalists in Ireland. See who your local herbalist is. Everybody, for me it was my chest, for somebody else it might be migraine, for somebody else it might be eczema or hay fever. For hay fever, I say to people, start taking the herbs at Easter, a month before you usually get the symptoms, and you might enjoy the summer a little bit more. So it is a learning experience. It's transformational. It's not like taking a paracetamol, although we have lots of different, we have many varieties of willow which contain salicylic acid, but it doesn't upset the stomach. You know, I always think that God did a good job with making natural aspirin, because it doesn't cause bleeding and it doesn't upset the stomach. And many herbs are like that with their therapeutic effects. They're very safe. It's not that no herbs have side effects. That would be, you know, not the right thing to say, but they, in general, they're very safe with very few side effects. Some suit people more than others. Some people get on very well with chamomile. Other people find it doesn't have an effect, so they might need to use lime flower or wild oats. So it's a learning experience and transformational, yeah, and it requires openness to learn the skills. But seek help. Seek help. Everybody has to start somewhere.
Exactly. Well, listen, Dilis, it has been a pleasure chatting to you. And I suppose it is a lifestyle change and a lifestyle choice that is there for us if we want to make it. So it has been a real pleasure chatting to you, and we'll be coming back to you in a little while. So thank you so much for all of that.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity.
Now, my final guest this evening is Siobhán de Paor, and Siobhán is a fella, a poet in the traditional Celtic style of poetry writing, and along with her partner, she runs the Wild Irish Retreat on the Dingle Peninsula. Siobhán, you're very welcome to Centre Ground.
Thank you, Anna. It's lovely to be here.
So I suppose, again, for our viewers who are meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I qualified as a journalist in 2004, and I worked as a journalist for a while. I suppose a bit like Dilis, I was always on the fringe. But I definitely bought into the ideology, the dominant ideology, you know. I believed in all the institutions of government, and but there was always a kind of an anxiety in me, You know, I remember working as a journalist. And I thought it was just because I was young and maybe I'd grow out of it. But it was always there. And then I had, well, I suppose it was about 6 years. Yeah, 6 years. I worked print journalism, newspapers. And I had a spiritual awakening. And I, the Saturn return, 28, the age of 28. And I headed off to India, as you do. And I ended up, I went out there as a journalist to cover women's issues out there. I got the Simon Cumber's bursary, and off I went to do a series of 5 articles about women out there, very interesting, in Nepal actually. In the end, we couldn't get into Pakistan. And as I was out there, I just gradually lost a hold of that. I was trying to hold on to it. I was trying to send articles back, and I was trying to take the photos, but I couldn't. I lost my grip on that reality. And I ended up staying there for 3 years. And I went into meditation, and I learned about Ayurveda and all the things I never knew about. You know, I never had a clue about the herbalism that Claire is talking about there now, or Dr. Dilis. All these things I hadn't. They weren't in my awareness, you know. So I spent the 3 years just learning numerology and oh God, I just went one thing after another, you know, and astrology, all the metaphysical things. And I came home then because my mother was sick and she was dying. And so after she passed on, I was kind of adrift, you know. The person that left Ireland wasn't the person that came back, you know. And I didn't even recognise the country. So I went to Cork City, and I couldn't stay there. And I took a trip to Kerry, and I thought I could stay here. I could stay here. So I did. And I had no place to live or anything. I had a tent. But you know, when you're following something deeper, life will always provide. And I remember I was at this beautiful spot, and I was thinking, God. And I'd opened up, actually, the first time I'd read, and it activated this love of plants and herbs in me, one of my mother's old books about herbs. And I was reading it at this place, Cúsnané, extraordinary place, right on the Atlantic there, seaweed, kelp garden down below, little coast, little harbour. And I said, I'd love to live here, you know. And as I drove up from that place, there was a little sign that said room to rent. And I drove in there, and she, very cheap rent. And in I went, and that's where I lived for 2 years. And that's
so
where I met.
If we kind of fast forward, then you met Dermot. Tell us a little bit about Dermot. He's a very famous hurler.
He is, yeah. Well, he was. I mean, he's still famous, and he still hurls, but he's you know, he doesn't do it professionally anymore, and now he does the wild hurling on the beach. You know, so he's bringing it more into the community and out of the pitch, you know. So I met Dermot there. He was the captain of Wexford's team, but sure, I didn't, you know. You know, I didn't know anything.
The captain of the Wexford hurling team.
Yeah.
And you have to you've together now, you have set up the Wild Irish Retreat.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So in this place that I stayed, that I pitched my tent, this is now the place that we bring people. And this is the place where we go foraging for seaweed. Diarmuid and I kind of went on a similar healing journey down here on the Dingle Peninsula. It's a very special place, and we both kind of come a bit lost and just settled there in the middle of nowhere. And as it turned out, we were next door to each other, and we met, and we have 2 children now. So but this was our journey was with this place. With this stretch of coastline, everything we needed was there. I learned about herbs and he learned about seaweed, and we swam in the ocean there, and he taught me how to play hurling on the beach there, and we knew that we were in a very special place, and we wanted to share it with people. And so we created the Wild Irish Retreat as a way to share it with people. But the most important part of it all was the Irish language. When we came to Kerry, we both started speaking Irish, and when we met each other in particular, we were able to speak it with each other, so it improved very quickly, and it activated a sort of a connection with the place that I'd never felt before. I felt a sense of community and belonging that I hadn't felt before, and I'm originally from the Ring Gaeltacht, but I never had that same feeling there, and so we founded Wild Irish Retreat, and people come down and they experience all the things that we experienced and learned for ourselves. The seaweed foraging in that beautiful kelp garden, the wildflower foraging and identifying the wildflowers, and like Dilis was saying, that the levels, it's people have no idea. Most people have no idea what anything's called, even, not to mind its uses. So it's a hedge school. It's an education in all the things that are around us, the abundance that's around us, and it's physical as well. It's about staying in the body, like Kathleen was talking about. There's the hurling and the swimming and the hill walking. It's a very important part of it, and the yoga. And the emphasis all the time it's all through Irish, and the emphasis is on our language, because the reconnection with yourself, the spiritual rewilding, as we call it, is done through Irish. I could say it's expedited through Irish, because I think my soul speaks Irish. There's a feeling in my body when myself and Diarmuid are speaking Irish in the house. We're much less inclined to fight. In the Irish speaking community, everyone's very nice to each other, and you can say whatever you want. People, I was just saying, you have a joke, like, you can be as controversial as you want in Irish, because people are just delighted to hear you talking.
But you have an unbelievable command of the English language, and much of your poetry is written through English. And I just have this short clip here of you reciting one. It's a part of one of your poems. So if we could have that there now, Danny, please, it would be great.
Did you emerge in the state of emergency with a cover story of urgency, of a relative in dire need or some old folks to feed? Did you strain at your restrainment and feign your containment? Take an unessential journey because the need was burning, hop in the car, travel at night, make for your mam to make sure she was all right? Were you outraged when them city folks arrived? All them city germs would surely have survived to infect our clean country air. Do you think it's not fair? We shouldn't have to share. Did you lie to the guard, say you weren't going far up the road with an essential load? Or did you comply and spy on your neighbours who are able to scorn the law and it sticks in your craw? Did you call the Gardaí when groups of more than 3 young fellas were gathering down on the quay, up to no good like boys in the hood?
That's just a short extract from an extended poem that you have filmed, and it's available on your YouTube channel, Siobhán de Paor. When did you start writing the poetry?
I started writing, you know, the first poem I wrote was my mother's eulogy. And after that, I started writing in Cork, but it was here. It was when I came to Kerry and started writing in Irish. There's something, the language activates your creativity in a very mysterious way, I think. And it's hard to write. It's harder to write in Irish because, like you said, I have a command of the English language. The English language it's so full of double entendres, and you know, it's so easy to make it rhyme. It's just I have reached a certain level now where I can command. You can say I have a command of that language. I don't have the same command in Irish, so I have to, you know, be okay with starting again and being rusty. And you know, I'm not a Gaeilgeoir. I'm not a native speaker. My parents didn't speak it, but I would be a fluent speaker. Yeah, so it was here. It was here in this place that it really flowed.
Mm-hmm. At the Convergence, the Sovereign Ireland Convergence on Saturday night, you recited a poem, and I was just so taken by it. I'd love you to recite it again if that would be possible. And I think I can hear baby gurgling away on your knee. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Yes. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at Junior. Isn't he beautiful? A little boy, is it?
It's a little girl. It's just
I do apologise. What do you call her?
Her name is Eru.
Oh, beautiful name, Errol. And how old is Errol?
She's only 7 weeks old.
What?
I know. She's thriving.
Oh my goodness me, 7. Oh, sure, you're really out at the maternity ward.
I know. She just loves it. No, she's a champ. Like she's just a little champ.
This is a first for Centre Ground, our very first baby. So Siobhán, maybe you recite that poem for us now, if you can, please.
I will do it. So I wrote these. I wrote these at the start of the last lockdown. There's 2 poems here. There was plenty coming out of me at that time. So it's still relevant because we're still in lockdown. Surprise, surprise. This is the quiet spring. Contain yourself, restrain yourself, your natural exuberance, the compulsion to dance. Yes, spring has arrived, but these are serious times where touching is a crime against humanity, against the sanitary insanity that says don't hold hands. If you love your gran, if you care, if you would spare her life, then mind. You don't get too close and be the host of the deadly germ. These are the terms of the new social contract that says no social contact. And in the small print, one big hint. There will be no compensation if a person dies from isolation. Refrain from surplus and extra trimmings and outings for those who've had good innings. Losing out is how we are winning, stopping the spread of one virus by the proliferation of another. Fear stalks the land and fear stalls my hand over the post button, and the thought, how many trolls will accuse me of killing the old if I advocate the great outdoors, if I question the cute whores. They closed the mart and the farmers took it, quietened their outrage. How far can we push it? How much can we shush it? The voice of dissension, the barest mention of a draconian motive. Why the people have voted, called for this totalitarian bliss. Times are queer, hotels commandeered for old-timers and frontliners who are cleaning up the mess in plastic gloves, trying to address the shrinking need with growing means. Normal life is on hiatus. God help us, God save us. People are so very tense, and so common sense also took leave to give them leave to pass an emergency law with more than one flaw, to give such punitive powers to those better known as that shower. Do you trust this Taoiseach man? Would you shake his hand in better days, or would you reject his spin and suspect the motives of a millionaire who claims to really care about the poor when he says stay indoors? So more of the what fors and less of the meant to be's, because isolation causes entropy, not just according to me or a group of fanatics, but according to the second law of thermodynamics. Isolation causes entropy. So is it any wonder that a lockdown brings out the worst in ye, socially, politically, biologically? Out there she breathes, and she cedes control to a higher power. Released from the church and neglected perch, she wanders the streets, touching all that she meets. And in the quiet spring, when the guard said stay in, the spirit emerged above the loud din of public health warnings and fearful thoughts forming. She said, arise, dear people, for much is at stake. There are fates worse than death. How much will it take? How much will it take? The second one is called Congregating. People were congregating and they were generating concern among other people. Now there's 2 lone souls on a 15-kilometre beach because them queuing at Ballybunion Chipper didn't keep arm's reach. There's the blue siren flashing on the peninsula opposite, patrolling the coastline, keeping surfers off of it. They did the rounds last night up in the estate, but they found no house party, just folks resigned to their fate. Over 70s mostly that must cocoon, turning in early after the news, whispering a few prayers against the bloody flu. No, it's not house arrest if it's for your own good. Sure, we'll give you a call, make sure you've plenty of food. Jimmy says people are gone daft. Most of them now will only tap. But he doesn't mind the tracking app. Says it might be just the thing to rein this virus in and get things back to normal. But soon they'll make it formal. In an announcement on approved stations, the restrictions will remain in place until further considerations. No, there's no back to normal. And if there was, would you want the normal that didn't blink when the snow leopard became extinct? The normal that ignores Yemen's starving hordes? No children allowed in the shop. Well, did you ever see a child cover their mouth when they cough? Early learning, yes. But what if their grubby little fingers touching everything they see? Early learning, yes. But what if they sneeze? So we're checking for vectors, says the security guard at SuperValue's door. We're bouncing out families of 3 people or more. Shopping now is a serious game, 1 per household, just essentials, nothing vain. Easter is coming, super saver deals on chocolate, and all the ads are about community as they attack the heart of it. Because the power of men is in gathering in prayer. With the land and the trees, to this no force can compare. When we congregate, then we generate an alternative reality that crumbles the great fallacy of the virus inside us, better known as separation, the original sin that caused the great degradation of our Holy Mother, whom we perceived as other. And we, the fruit of her loins, rotted in our separate minds. But a unification will arise, foretold at the dawn of time. When we hear her here, when we now know, Mother is other. For the chamber is filling and it's terrifying and thrilling, and many will resist, but enough will be willing.
My goodness, Siobhán, that is just absolutely powerful. I will ask Stephen tomorrow to just put that poem, the 2 poems together into a single short video that we can listen to over and over again, because there's just so much to unpack. It's beyond words, and I just want to thank you. You've truly captured what is happening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Siobhán. And we'll be back to you in a moment. We'll go now to Peter. Peter, you have been waiting quietly and patiently in the wings, and I'm looking at the clock here. The hour is gone. I just couldn't stop these women in full flow. Just so inspirational. I just couldn't.
No, completely, so, Anna. Absolutely. You know, I mean, this is. I have to say, I'm loving this. How to follow that? We've had 3 inspirational guests. Wonderful contributions as always. Two quick things. I mean, you know, I'm always amazed because I love this role because I mean I always learn so much, kind of sitting quietly in the sidelines or behind the scenes and listening intently. And the first, I suppose, benefit from that is that I learn a huge amount. But also, and I probably mentioned this before, and I hope I don't belabor the point, but I just feel a deep responsibility to both yourself and also our guests just to listen intently to what they're saying. And I always kind of pick out little vignettes from what they say and really just kind of thread it into a coherence and try and join a few dots and contextualize it, working towards this week's hot topic, as we refer to it. So really wonderful contributions, Anna. I mean, firstly, there, Kathleen's point about, you know, fireside chats. I mean, I love that notion, the warmth and that homeliness, reminiscent perhaps of FDR's fireside chats. I think that's where the term originated. When Kathleen then talks about the importance of outdoors and being outside and accessing our natural genius, I just wonder, in the context of lockdowns, you know, that word and the power of that word lockdown, it comes from prison. It comes from that notion of being hemmed in, being walled in, being constrained, and necessarily being indoors. So, you know, we're actually, again, and we've covered it in previous shows, we're separated from nature and what, you know, gives us, you know, maybe a life force, and as Kathleen has described it, our natural genius. And again, you know, moving probably towards what this week's hot topic question will be, then how does that affect mental health? And we will mention that in a few moments. It's interesting as well, Kathleen, with Paddy there, the grassroots media, you know, the media from the ground up of the people, I think is going to be one of the positives from all of this. One of the, I think, I would say positive, unintended consequences, but positive. I think community is important. It intrigued me when Kathleen, you know, talked about community and about the importance of growing your own in the context of self-sufficiency. Again, where we're potentially going, that I think is a trend that's going to be very, very important in the context of the transition movement, which really has been forced upon us now. Dilis, I mean, what Dilis was saying there, it's something that I'm familiar with myself. I mean, I do a 3-hour lecture on nutraceuticals and phytobiotics and botanicals, really only scratching the surface. And you know, that area of gut dysbiosis is really massive in terms of, you know, really in developed economies, you know, in economies in countries like our own, that connection with chronic degenerative diseases, and you know how all that ties back in with farming, with regenerative farming, with contaminants in our environment, in our food, and so on. When she talked about transformative and experiential learning, that's something that in the day job, again, I'm very familiar with, and people are only beginning to realize the importance now of learning by doing. And that ties in as well with, you know, being outside and being in the world, and literally actually not being corralled inside and almost chained, you could say metaphorically chained to a keyboard and looking at a screen, ironically, as I say this. But you know, the internet has its benefits as well. Also, she mentioned, Dilis mentioned the cycles of life and a society in denial about the cycles of life. And you know, what we're seeing is this stultifying fear of death, because, you know, among a proportion of the population, and when people are afraid, they'll do anything, and fear being, if you like, a tool of manipulation. But again, you know, maybe the question is you know, begged, why or how have we arrived at this point? something we've covered in a previous episode, Anna, you know, that issue of medical tyranny, when Dilis says, you know, doctors are trained not to be open, you know, that ties in very much with, again, that issue of, you know, tentative or putative medical tyranny that we've touched on. Siobhán, I mean, you know, I'm speechless. I'm really left speechless. One thing that of note that Siobhán said early on in her contribution was her anxiety as a journalist. You know, and I think again it rhymes with, or it chimes with another issue we've touched on. This issue of, you know, modern journalism. What exactly are journalists trained to do, or what are they trying to do? Interesting as well that when Siobhán came back from her time in India and Nepal, that she didn't recognize the country upon her return. So again, that was, you know, Siobhán is not the first person I've heard saying that. But again, it's interesting when you hear people who were away for a while and they come back, the changes that have manifested that they perceive that, you know, those of us who, although when I was away, but I was only in the UK, but people who've been away for a while, maybe in different cultures, they perceive real changes. And what I'll do, Anna, then is really, you know, I've tried to thread some of those points through the observations that I've made from our guests this week to try to contextualize this week's hot topic question. And bearing in mind that we have gone over the hour, but, you know, it's flown by. We really haven't felt it. And this week's hot topic question, Anna, is: what effect will the government's revised living with COVID plan announced yesterday evening have on mental health?
Okay, so Kathleen, would you like to come in first on that question?
I am the cause of my life. My life comes from within me, so I'm not at the effect of the outside world. And what I would like to do, something different, is share a song. And this song speaks following Siobhán's amazing poetry. Aontas is in the title. Aontas are we. We are one in ourselves, and we are one connected to all natural, real things. Then I have a presentation to give you, Anna. You'll have to share it with Peter. So here's
sorry, Kathleen, we won't have time for the presentation, but we will have time for your song, but not for the presentation.
I'll surprise you. You'll love it. The song is short, and it's nearly 20 years old, but very relevant now. Because amongst us in Ireland, we have the gems, we have the gold within. So everyone has it. Shh and shh and listen, shh and recall, call, weave it all. Oh, breathe it slow. Oh, yes, you know. Oh, let it go. Oh, we know. Hey, hi, hey, come away. Hey, hi, hey, never stray. Hey, hi, hey, hover, sway. Hey, hi, hey, here today. Oh, breathe it slow. Oh, yes, you know. Oh, let it go. Oh, we know. Oh, hey, crystal day. Oh, hey, seize the day. Oh, hey, shh, recall, call, we have it all. Oh, breathe it slow. Oh, yes, you know. Oh, ro, we know. Dulra Oru, nature renewed. Dulra Oru, free for you. Dulra Oru, free for me. Dulra Oru, and this are we. Presentation is fresh vegetables from the garden and a little love heart. So you can imagine eating this colorful food and trees that I'm ever so proud of to heat us, warm us with the fire. Thank you so much.
Kathleen, when you spoke about a presentation, I thought you were talking about a PowerPoint presentation.
You know what? My favorite thing is the present. Isn't that what we shared when we first met? So being present. I mean, it takes work and practice, but there you go.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for that. Thank you. Dilis, what's your response to this whole issue of lockdown and mental health?
I'm a very practical, down-to-earth kind of person, and I would like to share for recovery the knowledge through science and tradition of herbs that will help people to recover, and that includes the long time. I have a lot of concerns for post-viral fatigue, chronic fatigue. This isn't specific to COVID, but it is a long influenza. There was a paper, substantial scientific paper, published, including by an associate professor, Fabio Boylan in Trinity. And they took the trouble to look for benefits of herbs that are reasonably researched. And there are 5: elderflower, mallow, myrrh, ivy, and licorice. And there are 12, I won't name them all, that are very likely to have a positive benefit. And there are 22 of the remaining 39, the total of 39, there are 22 that traditionally are known to be to be useful, but there isn't enough science. All together, they have a much higher safety profile than the endorsed medications of paracetamol, ibuprofen, or codeine. Treating the symptoms well avoids, in my clinical experience, prolonged problems. If I see somebody early with glandular fever, I can pretty much guarantee the benefits of a less protracted period of disability. So that's what I would like, particularly the mental health. Post-viral effects are very debilitating for mental health. So my response is not specifically to this part of lockdown, may it be the last, but to let people know, because I have a duty of care and responsibility to share that. I have shared it with the general media, no response. I've summarized it, no response. So I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to let people know that they're not helpless, and breathe. It's pneuma, it's the power, it's the energy, and the singing does it beautifully. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah. So I suppose really what's coming across is quite unique, not the answers that I was expecting to get. So as regards mental health, we can sing and connect with ourselves that way. And with you, Dilis, you were speaking about all of these various herbs and medicinal products that are available to help us with our mental health. Siobhán, finally, what are your views on lockdown and mental health?
I mean, I have it in that line: isolation causes entropy. Entropy is chaos. I feel that the lockdown is a great violence being perpetrated on the people of the world. But in keeping with the tone set by the two women, it's when we're really It's when we're really faced with adversity that we can bloom, you know. And there's a great violence being perpetrated on the people of this country as we speak. And how have they responded? They've been isolated from our families, you know. They've gone out and they've connected with nature instead. And this was the message that we would always trying to preach, you know. Go out and connect with nature. Go out, you know, there's the healing is there. It's all there. It's all there. Just be in her. Just spend the day outside from morning till evening and see how you get on. You know, don't go inside at all. And this is what people are discovering, and there are other people swimming in the sea, you know, and going out and starting a garden. So isolated from one another, we have turned to nature and to the great company that is there. This lockdown will take lives, and people will die. People will kill themselves because in isolation, that's what happens. There's no two ways about it, and 10 million budget won't change that. But also, people will go further into the embrace of nature for solace, for comfort, and they'll find there the healing that eluded them in a non-fascist world.
Yeah. Siobhán, that actually is a beautiful, positive message on which to end our programme this evening, that to go out into the world of nature and to feel her embrace and spend a day outside. And I suppose really the message that's coming across from all of you is that we are the authors of our own destiny. Our lives are in our own hands. We have the power to choose what we want to do and how we want to think and how we want to live. Kathleen, Dilis and Siobhán, it has been, I suppose, an outstanding pleasure to have the three of you as our guests tonight on Centre Ground. Hugely, hugely inspirational women who stepped out of the rat race to live an authentic life, the life of your dreams. And I hope that your sharing tonight will inspire others to actually start to think of living an authentic life. And if I could just add to that, Buckminster Fuller said not to put our energy into tearing down the old. Let's put our energy into building the new, so that the old becomes obsolete. And finally, to Peter, I want to thank you as always for your wonderful, wonderful contribution, the way you're able to pull everything together and introduce the hot topic for us. So to those of you who have been watching tonight, I hope you enjoyed tonight's programme. I hope you found it as inspirational as I have. I suppose, wish you a blessed week ahead, and we'll be back with you next Wednesday evening, as always, at 9 o'clock. Just a reminder that Dr. Finbar's programme Double Down will go out tomorrow night on the Irish Inquiry at 9 o'clock. And it is a programme that focuses on current affairs and a look at the news and interviews with guests that you won't find on mainstream media. So until next week, Wednesday night, 9 o'clock, Bannock Day or Valéir.